Fortune hunters spend years searching for unimaginable treasures lost at the bottom of our oceans, and the stakes are high. Yet 3 centuries ago, they were a lot higher. Battles were fought and much blood was spilt when fortune hunters of a very different kind risked everything for the very same treasure. In 1492, Christopher Columbus quite literally put the Americas on the map. This milestone in history also sparked over 250 years of perilous treasure hunting and brutal competition with the English, the French, the Spanish, the Dutch, and the Portuguese all vying for gold, silver, and other riches. Galleons were sunk, thousands were killed, and up until the mid-1700s, it was the pirates who ruled the waves. I set out to follow the routes the galleons took and the pirates who sought them out. We look at the treasure at stake and what still remains here from that extraordinary era. The New World included parts of North and South America and the Caribbean. These lands were originally home to great civilizations, including the Arawak, Aztec, Maya, and the Incas. Some of these indigenous cultures had existed for thousands of years before the arrival of the Spanish, and their kingdoms were rich in gold. My journey starts in Panama and Colombia. Then I cross to the islands of Jamaica and the Bahamas, ending up in the Florida Keys. Along with gold, silver, and gems, the Spanish found beautiful textiles, coca, and spices in what is now Peru, Colombia, Mexico, and other parts of Central and South America. And once the initial "we've hit the jackpot" euphoria subsided, they were left with the sobering task of somehow getting it all home. Not only was transport across land and sea a major challenge, but once other European nations heard what was happening here in the New World, they too wanted a piece of the action. The Museo del Oro in Bogota, the capital of Colombia, is probably the most important gold museum in the world. When the Spanish arrived early in the 16th century, it is easy to see what all the fuss was about. Here they have 34,000 gold artifacts dating back to 500 BC, made by the original people of Colombia. To them, gold symbolized the vibrant energy of the sun. Sadly, the conquistadors, in order to get their hands on it, all but wiped out the indigenous people. This tiny sculpture depicts the famous legend of El Dorado, where in the early 16th century, a cacique, or tribal chief, once ruled the Andes region of what is now Colombia. This is a replica, but the myth goes that in a ceremony to the gods, he covered himself from head to toe in gold dust and dived into the pure mountain waters of Lake Guaravita, where in 1537 the Spanish first found the Muisca people and their gold.
Sprung sprang from the rivers and streams, from the ground on which we walked, and to Mother Earth it was always returned, to keep it bright like the sun and protect us against the evil spirits. One day, the spirits grew strong and sent warriors to destroy our people. Great beasts, half man, half horse, came from giant ships on the water. Some said they were the gods themselves who were angry to our people. We learned the truth too late. These strangers from a distant land, carrying fire and hunger for blood, they killed our people and took away our gold.
Treasures that the Spanish collected along the Pacific coast, including serious amounts of gold and silver from Peru, were brought here to Panama City. In the 1520s, the Spanish began construction of the famous Camino Real, or King's Highway. It was a mule trail that stretched all the way from here through the jungle to the port of Portobello on the Caribbean Sea. And this is where it begins. This is the King's Bridge, and it sits on what is now called Panama la Vieja, or Old Panama City. Obviously, the neighborhood has changed a bit, but this road, the path through the jungle, still exists, and it served the Spanish well for 3 centuries. From Panama City, the Camino Real stretched 50 miles across the isthmus to Nombre de Dios. When the port was ransacked by Sir Francis Drake in 1572, the trail was extended to Portobello. I am about halfway between Panama City and Portobello in the Chagres National Park. And this is a great example of what remains of the original road. The Spanish basically spared no expense. They had to bushwhack through this really dense, thick rainforest. Then they paved a road, and they made it wide enough, not just for one mule cart, but for 2, so that one could bring in provisions while the other left with their treasures. Boy, they were really dedicated to that loot. But the Spanish shipped over hundreds of African slaves to build the trail for them. Some slaves escaped, but most were then used to drive the mule trains as well. Not a good place to slip. There's a snake. Right. Yeah, that's just one of the many things that they would have encountered here. They've got vipers, which is what I think that is. Bushmasters, coral snakes, poisonous frogs, jaguars, not to mention diseases like malaria and yellow fever. This was an incredible hazard. You were lucky to get out alive. Once built, it would usually take the Spanish 10 to 14 days to reach Portobello. That is, if they didn't run into any other problems, which of course they did. One big challenge for the Spanish was to protect the mule trains from pirate attack. About 4 miles north of Portobello is the spot where one mule train was ambushed in 1573. I was taken there by pirate aficionado René Gomez.
They were heavily fortified. There were like 200 Spaniards up in the front, like 100 on the back. So imagine nobody on his right mind would try to attack a mule train with so heavily fortified.
Exactly. You'd have to be either completely crazy or incredibly confident.
Sir Francis Drake, he's the one that had the audacity to attack. But he didn't do it by himself. He recruited the help of the Cimarrones.
Who are the Cimarrones?
Cimarrones were these slaves that had escaped. They lived up in the hills.
So they would have wanted a little revenge, right?
Exactly.
Against the Spanish.
Yes, sir.
All right, so what happened in this place?
Sir Francis Drake's logbook says specifically that they attacked the mule train right at the joint of Juan Miguel Creek, which is this one right here, where it meets the Nombre de Dios River. That's where it happens.
Okay, and so, it was near...
And this flat terrain, they had to have a flat terrain because they had to have all the 90 mules be able to be seen, the one on the front and the one in the back. Let me show you the terrain back there.
That Drake knew how to ambush, right?
Drake ambushed the mule train right here on these plains.
He managed to take by surprise 300 Spanish soldiers.
Yes, and the slaves who were with them. And imagine every mule carry about 200 pounds.
Right.
90 mules, that's a lot of treasure.
That's millions of dollars in today's money, right?
Yes, yes.
So this was a worthwhile risk.
Exactly, it was.
And how did he get all of that out?
Well, he put on his back, his men's back, 50 pounds. That's what they could carry. And then they hid the silver ingots in the riverbeds as well as under fallen trees and so on.
He hid it.
Yes.
Did he come back for it?
Yes, he did come back.
Darn it! You think he forgot something?
Well, maybe so. Maybe.
You never know.
Like, no.
You never know. All right, I'm going to find this. If there's one piece left, I'm going to find it.
Portobello was built by the Spanish in the 16th century, and at that time it was a key port on the Caribbean coast.
This is the end of the road, literally all the way from Panama City, 50 miles through that rainforest. It ends here. It's marked by this fan shape, which was a sundial. And just over there is where all of the treasure would have been stored. It's the King's Warehouse.
The King's Warehouse was a big risk. Galleons weren't dispatched to collect the treasure until the warehouse was stacked to the rafters. And during the 16th century, the quantity of treasure that the Spanish exported increased from 400,000 to 16 million pesos.
It said that 253 soldiers guarded this warehouse, and they were not allowed to move more than a few meters away. So you can imagine the scene. They slept where they could, they ate all their meals here, they got drunk, they played dice. Those walls could talk.
Two fleets were sent twice a year, first from Seville, later from Cadiz. They sailed down the coast of Africa to the Canary Islands, picked up supplies, and caught the trade winds across the Atlantic to Puerto Rico, where the fleet split up. One sailed to Mexico, then down the west coast of Florida. The other sailed to Cartagena in Colombia, then on to Nombre de Dios and Portobello in Panama.
I'm just on the other side of the bay from Portobello, and imagine here, at its peak of activity, were moored 100 galleons. And just over there on that beach is where they would have been careened, which was important for two reasons. One, they needed serious maintenance and repair work, and two, this is where they would have been cleaned. So scraping off the barnacles helped these rather slow and cumbersome ships go just that much faster home to Spain. Just 20 miles north of here, the Spanish had another port called Nombre de Dios, and it was completely destroyed by pirates. They were not about to let that happen here, so they created this fort to prevent any kind of pirate tomfoolery.
The two treasure fleets rendezvoused in Havana, Cuba, where they stocked up on supplies for the long trip home to Spain. From Havana, the two fleets sailed north up the east coast of Florida as far as Cape Canaveral before heading back across the Atlantic.
Spain's New World monopoly became a source of tension with other European countries, and the treasures were irresistible. Foreign ships honed in on the Caribbean, and whether they were Spain's enemies or hungry adventurers, to the Spanish, they were all pirates.
Foreign navies and privateers not only attacked the galleons, but also the Spanish ports, such as Cartagena in Colombia, which was another key storehouse of treasure in the New World. The biggest attack was in 1741, when the English Admiral Edward Vernon laid siege with a fleet of 186 ships and 25,000 soldiers.
Spanish conquistador Don Blas de Lezo embarrassed the English by successfully defending the city using only 2,500 poorly equipped and ill-trained men. Unfortunately, he died shortly thereafter, but he became a hero in Spain, and to the locals here today, he's still considered the savior of Cartagena.
It's said that I was at my best when I was most handicapped. I lost this leg in 1704 when I was a mere boy. Then, in 1713, I had this arm amputated in the midst of battle. I almost lost my life twice. Though I like to think that I left a piece of myself on each battlefield in exchange for a little glory.
Between the 16 and 1800s, Cartagena suffered 5 major attacks, and in response, the Spaniards built up a series of forts and walls around the town. Local guide Fernando Lopez Prenz gave me a tour.
Tell me about these incredible walls.
We call them murallas.
Murallas.
The Spanish, they built them in 2 centuries.
It took 200 years to build them.
200 years. Because the king of Spain, he considered the city needed the walls to protect the city, because the city was taken so many times. Yeah, was taken so many times by the pirates. So finally, they completed them in the 1796. The wars they had already finished.
It was all over by then.
Yeah, that was over. This fort here, it's San Felipe the Fortress, the biggest fort ever built by the Spanish here in Americas.
Both north and south. This is the biggest.
Yeah, this is the biggest one.
Yeah.
And this fort never was taken by pirates.
This is a very serious fort then.
Yeah.
And it looks to be pretty intact.
We
like
could say that the 90% of what we see here, it's original.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beneath the fort, the Spanish built a complex labyrinth of tunnels to carry supplies from one end to another and communicate without enemies knowing. The Iglesia de Santo Domingo in the Old Town was built in the 16th century. It's the oldest church in Cartagena and contains something very rare.
This is the tomb of the unknown pirate. It's very rare to find
a pirate buried in a
church. A story of this pirate goes that the pirate, who belongs to a force attacking Cartagena, he was wounded and he came here for help. But the priests who were living here, they couldn't do anything for him, and he died. And the priests, they wrote this, said the unknown pirate, rest in peace.
What happened to the rest of the pirates?
Well, usually they throw them in the sea.
Right. It's pretty incredible.
The most famous attack on Cartagena was by none other than Sir Francis Drake. To the Spanish, he was one of the worst pirates of all time. However, in English history books, he was a distinguished mariner known as a privateer. So what's the difference? Well, if two countries were at war, as Spain and England often were back then, some seafaring adventurers were actually commissioned by the state to colonize, claim, or steal riches by any means necessary. Basically, pillaging and plundering on behalf of their country. Drake pillaged under license of Queen Elizabeth I of England. He was her own legal pirate, her favorite privateer. During his single raid on Cartagena in 1586, he set fire to the cathedral, held the city hostage for more than 100 days, before agreeing not to level it in return for a huge ransom of 10 million pesos. Drake was the first Englishman to circumnavigate the globe, though his biggest haul was the treasure of the Spanish galleon Cacafuego in Esmeraldas, Ecuador. He died in 1596, a national hero to the English, El Dragón to the Spanish, and was buried at sea near Portobello off the east coast of Panama. René Gomez took me out to visit the actual spot where Drake died.
This is the Bay of Portobello. On the left-hand side, you have Drake's Island.
Drake's Island?
Drake's Island, yeah.
Where he has been laid to rest?
So they say, but actually he's put out the rest further out that way.
How do you know?
The logbook, the Drake's logbook. Yes, it says exactly where he died. So I brought you out to sea, where we could line up all the islands. Over there you can see the furlongs that you can see on this picture.
These two little ones are right there.
Exactly. And then over here, the Three Sisters.
One, two, three.
Yes.
It's the same! Okay, and so this is noted by the secretary of Drake
that he died on the 28th of January, 1595. And you're saying it was just here. But what did he die of? It says something crazy. It says the bloody flix or Bundy.
Bloody flux is.
Bloody flux.
Yes.
What's that?
It's basically dysentery, and he died of diarrhea.
No.
Yes.
Oh, how gross!
Drake was in his mid-50s when he died. Now the hunt is on for the lead coffin in which he was sealed. His log states that he lies 2 leagues from Portobello in 30 meters of water. What would happen if Drake was found is disputed. Some say he should be returned to England and reburied at Westminster Abbey. Others say he should be left where he is. When wars ended, some privateers became pirates. Old habits die hard, and some just kept plundering to line their own pockets. One of many who did this was ruthless Welshman Captain Henry Morgan.
Despite the peace treaty that England had signed with Spain, well, Morgan, he just ignored it. After all, he had already assembled a force of 2,000 desperados, and he attacked Panama City all the same. I think it was just too tempting for him. 60% of all the silver from the Americas passed through here. This was an immensely rich city. These are the ruins of old Panama City, and I do believe they look pretty much as they did when Morgan left. The story goes that he sent his pistol along with a letter to the Spanish governor saying he'd be there to personally pick them up in 1 year. It ended up taking 3. On January 28, 1671, despite having lost half his men marching through the jungle, Morgan attacked and destroyed this city. He picked up his gun from the governor and walked away with 600 prisoners and 175 mules loaded with treasure.
In the Casco Viejo, which was the new fortified city built nearby, there remains the only piece of gold left by Morgan and brought here after the old city was destroyed.
This altar is covered in gold. It's absolutely stunning, but it's even more priceless because it has withstood the test of time as well as pirates. Apparently, when the priests heard that Morgan was on his way, they covered the whole thing in a mixture of charcoal and water. And when he arrived, they said all of the gold, as well as the famous altar, had already been stolen by some other pirates. Can you believe it? Apparently, they even convinced him to donate money for a replacement. It is said that Morgan told the priests, "I don't know why, but I suspect that you are more of a pirate than I am."
Morgan also besieged Portobello a few years earlier in 1667, where it's said the Spanish used nuns as human shields. Yet here in Panama, the story goes that Morgan took a nun with him, who then became a pirate.
Miss Jamaica must know about ackee. Miss Jamaica must know about saltfish. Miss Jamaica must know about rundum. Miss Jamaica must know the national dish. Don't stop, say so.
I'm just trying to feel the flavor of Jamaica. Back to Morgan. Morgan, not only was he a privateer, but maybe we could turn it down for just 1 second.
Okay, I'll try.
Thank you. Just 1 second. Just a minute. So, not only was Morgan a privateer, but he was also a pirate. Then he was arrested, jailed, released, then knighted, then made lieutenant governor of Port Royal. That last bit may have had something to do with the fact that his uncle had been the previous governor, but, you know, who knows? What a career, huh? And I'm in Jamaica. I'm going to follow them. Hello. More music.
That way she bound to
More
be in
Jamaica.
this world and be my real Jamaican girl. Hey, Miss Jamaica must know about reggae. Miss Jamaica must know about minto. She must tell the world about her culture and be proud of the black, the green and gold.
Today, Port Royal is little more than a very sleepy fishing village. But back in the golden age of piracy, it was a big city swarming with swashbucklers. And Morgan, ex-privateer and pirate himself, was sent to get rid of them.
Miss Jamaica must be my Jamaican
By the time I reached Port Royal in 1675, it had well earned its reputation as both the richest and wickedest city on the globe. It was a Sodom of the New World, all right. Nothing but cutthroats and debauchery. Rum and loose women drained the wealth of those boys to such a degree, many were reduced to beggary. They were fools, those pirates. But having had a taste of the life myself, I knew their ways, I knew their preferred moorings. I knew who they were, many of them. I even employed a few who gladly turned against their own captains for a few pieces of gold. And it's in that way that I tracked them down. To be sure, the last thing those boys saw was the muzzle of me pistol or the hangman's noose.
Although Morgan did much to stamp out piracy in the region, he died of acute alcoholism and tuberculosis at the age of 53 before he could finish the job.
From his years as pirate to privateer to governor, it's been calculated that Morgan amassed a fortune of millions of dollars. But you know what they say, you can't take it to the grave. This cemetery, just outside of Port Royal, dates back to the 1750s. There was a much older one here, just on the other side of this wall, where Morgan himself was buried. However, just 4 years after he died, a massive earthquake hit Port Royal, and the entire cemetery was washed out to sea. And now it's become a mangrove swamp.
The cemetery was the least of it. The earthquake caused 3 tidal waves, and with the disease which then spread like wildfire, the total death toll reached between 3,000 and 5,000, 3/4 of the population. In 1692, Port Royal covered 51 acres. After the earthquake struck, in a matter of hours, it was reduced to 33 acres, and it remains nothing more than a tiny fishing village to this day. Doric Gray of the Jamaica National Heritage Trust took me to the waterfront where the old city now lies.
Doric, what would Port Royal have been like back in the day, in its heyday?
Well, in its heyday, there were a lot of bars and taverns, a lot of smoking and drinking, and as a matter of fact, this is a fragment of a 17th century white clay pipe.
This is a pipe from the 17th century?
Yeah. And these are found, it's all over the place.
You just found that?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
It's all over the place. And these are those bits and pieces, because when you actually go underwater, and the excavations underwater have been able to reveal a lot. I mean, thousands of bottles of wine bottles, pipes, over 3,000 pipes, and so on was recovered. In fact, it is said that when the pirates came in, I mean, it was just party till morning. Port Royal was the most important 17th century English city.
Why?
In the Americas, because of the trade, because of the piracy.
They would have been really wealthy. If they were passing through here to get back to Europe with their gold and their silver, they would have been loaded. And
yes,
they would have...
definitely. This is where it is, right here, right along here. If you look out, you'll see that marker out there. That's the extremities. That's where Fort James is, sank in about 35 feet of water.
An entire fort.
An entire fort. But remember that 2/3 of the city sank underwater. Port Royal is actually a sand spit. And when the earthquake occurred, the sand actually liquefied. So like quicksand, and the buildings went down vertically. Intact, the walls fell in on top and sealed all the contents. So when you're excavating, you are finding artifacts, remains of that fateful day. You are finding complete whole stuff. We were able to locate one of the main streets in Port Royal at the time, Lime Street. Lime Street runs under this building here and runs out underwater. And we were working at the corner of Lime Street and Queen Street. A lot of persons have equalized this site to Pompeii. And if you look, that is part of
Can I grab that?
Of a wine bottle.
Really?
Fragments of it.
This?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Dozens of these were found underwater.
Yeah.
Which is an indication as to what the city was at the time.
You weren't kidding, right? About the smoking and the drinking, right?
Right, definitely.
Smoking and drinking, those pirates, those privateers.
Yes, and like the pipes, we find a lot of these all around the place.
To me, that's just extraordinary that this place is so abundant with things from so long ago.
Of course, most pirates did their plundering at sea. Between here and Spain, there are over 4,500 miles of ocean, and a fleet on a straight run with no problems could make it in about 5 months. However, before they could get anywhere close to home, even to the Atlantic, they had to navigate through the Caribbean, and that was like running a gauntlet. Here you are, my friend. So, one colorful pirate who terrorized these waters was Jack Rackham. Calico Jack, as he was known, famous, not only for designing the classic skull and crossbones that we all know, but 2 of his crew were women, Anne Bonny and Mary Read.
I met Jack in a Nassau tavern that road. We were secret lovers, but were found out.
No woman aboard ship, they said. It's a bad omen. Oh, what rubbish.
Calico Jack became a captain following a mutiny. He and Anne Bonny eloped from Nassau in the Bahamas and plundered ships from Florida down to Cuba, Hispaniola, and Jamaica, pressing other crews into service, including one sailor who turned out to be another woman, Mary Read. After the British outlawed piracy in 1687, Port Royal, instead of being a playground for pirates, became their place of execution. Calico Jack and the girls had 3 years of fun before they were captured off the coast of Negril here in Jamaica and taken to Port Royal for trial. The story goes that at the time of their capture, most of the crew were drunk and the 2 girls alone put up a fight. Jack was sentenced to death with the rest of his crew, but claiming they were pregnant, the girls escaped the noose and were thrown in jail.
Well, this is the woman's jail, and this is one of 2 prisons that were built in the 17th century, in 17th century Port Royal.
Yeah.
But as you can see, all the cells are still.
These are the cells.
Intact. Yes, they're
These are
still
the actual cells.
Still intact.
I'm gonna peek when you see that.
And this is where Anne Bonny and Mary Read were jailed here.
They were here. And what happened to them?
Well, Mary Read actually died here from fever, it's alleged, at the age of 31. And Anne Bonny escaped.
I heard this story that Calico Jack was allowed to visit her once before he was executed, and when he got here, she was really brutal. She said to him, Jack, I'm sorry to see you here, but if only you had fought like a man, you wouldn't now be hung like a dog. Oh,
yes,
he didn't want to hear that, did he?
Yes, no.
He wanted to hear,
sure.
honey, I love you, rest in peace, but that's not what a pirate woman says.
It is also alleged that she had a baby for Calico Jack.
So somewhere, perhaps in this world,
yes.
somewhere in this world might exist Calico Jack
relative.
Jr., 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 Jr.
Yes.
Local fisherman Gary Chinky took me out to Gallows Point, where Calico Jack was hung on November 17, 1720.
We're going to Gallows Point, where they hang Calico Jack. Wow, these roots.
I know, huh? We're going to be hung. This is So what do local people think of Calico Jack?
Calico Jack was dangerous, at the same time, you know, a gentleman, but the majority don't really know about Calico Jack.
So nobody's out there claiming to be his great-great-great-great-great-great grandchild.
Probably me. No, I'm just joking. Port Royal people, look at them. They look like descendants of the pirates. You know, just check them out.
Okay, I will.
Okay, Megan, this is Gallows Point. This is where they hung Calico Jack. It's changed over the years because of the earthquakes and so on, but this is the actual place. Okay, let's go to Rackham's Key, where his bones are, Megan, okay?
All right, we'll find Jack. 2 years after Calico Jack was hung, 41 pirates were executed in 1 month alone. And this, in fact, marked the beginning of the end for the swashbucklers of the Caribbean.
This is Rackham's Key, and this is where they hung up Calico Jack in a cage for everyone to see.
Oh, so his body just lying there.
Right, birds picking at him.
Oh, no. So as boats came in and out of Port Royal, you could not miss him.
You could not.
Major deterrent if somebody
as dangerous as Calico Jack. End up like this, anyone could.
Anyone could.
Times were changing, huh?
Oh, believe it.
Henry Morgan, Calico Jack, Mary Read, Anne Bonny, and many others were actually known as buccaneers, a term that originated on the island of Hispaniola, which is now Haiti and the Dominican Republic, then spread to other islands, including the Bahamas and Jamaica. A buccaneer was no different to any other pirate, with one exception. They learned to cook wild boar in what was known as a boucan oven, hence buccaneer. And there's only one place left in the Caribbean where they still prepare it in the same way. I'm in Boston Bay, which is just outside Port Antonio, and I've come here to meet Colonel Wallace Sterling, who's the current chief of the Maroon people. Now, the Maroons were escaped slaves who hid up in the hills and came down to the beach to trade with the pirates.
This is a jerk pit.
Yeah.
Now, what I would want to tell you that in the very early days, the jerking was done in a pit. And that was known as the Bucan style. And that is something that had started in the Hispaniola, where the pirates who adapted that style, you know, become known as the buccaneers.
Oh, that's
and these are something that they adapted from the Africans who were living there at that point in time.
Well, what's your name, sir? Master Chef.
I'm Rupert.
Rupert?
Yeah, Rupert.
I'm Megan. Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you, Megan.
Who taught you how to cook this?
It was my dad.
Your dad?
Yeah, my dad.
Who taught him?
Well, it's his grandfather.
His grandfather. So the secret is in the family.
Only in Boston.
Oh, it's one of a kind, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about that taste.
It's good. It's not spicy, too spicy. It's spicy, not cinnamony. Maybe cinnamon and...
You know, you got to put the right seasoning to it and treat it and marinate it the right way to bring out the flavor.
I'm going to take some to go, please.
Yeah,
is that okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Look at that. That's beautiful. And how much is this, Rupert?
That's $600.
$600. That's about about $10. A bargain. But you have to come all the way to Jamaica for it.
Yeah.
What do I have? 600.
Yes,
Perfecto.
600.
Okay, Rupert.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
I love it.
Okay, sir.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye now.
All right. No, you can go to the beach now.
On seeing ships approaching from the mountains, the Maroons came down here to Boston Beach to trade with the pirates. They exchanged their jerk pork for weapons such as muskets and cutlasses and other provisions they didn't have, like salt and clothing. Another buccaneer whose looting rampage stretched from Virginia and the high seas off Florida all the way across the Caribbean to Central America was possibly the most famous pirate of all time, Blackbeard. Blackbeard based himself between the Carolinas and here in Nassau in the Bahamas. Nassau was popular with pirates for its natural deep-water harbor with 2 entrances. The hazardous eastern end has reefs in shallow water that only pirates knew how to navigate in their smaller ships, or sloops, ideal for escape. Abandoned on a hill 5 miles east of Fort Montague is a ruin known as Blackbeard's Tower, which was supposedly used by the man himself back in the 17th century. It overlooks the eastern approach to Nassau Harbor to see any threat, or, of course, any opportunity.
It seems strange to think on it now, though it's true. I was born in Bristol, England, and christened Edward Teach. I never lived a good Christian life, though. I had 14 wives and killed them all. I also killed my first mate, just to keep the crew on their toes. I was partial to me rum and gunpowder cocktails, and I enjoyed scaring hell out of people. Even our flag was my idea, a skeleton dripping blood. In a short space of time, not only did I earn a reputation for great cruelty, but I also successfully circulated the rumor that I was in fact the devil incarnate.
Blackbeard enjoyed only a 2-year career as a pirate, yet it was enough to make him the most notorious pirate of all time. Killed in battle off the coast of North Carolina, Blackbeard was shot and cut down repeatedly, though he continued to fight until finally decapitated by an English lieutenant, who then hung his head on the front of his ship as a trophy. His body was thrown overboard, and myth has it that his headless corpse swam around the ship 3 times before sinking. The Florida coast and its 822 keys, being close to Havana, Cuba, where the galleons rendezvoused before crossing the Atlantic, was another big stamping ground for pirates. And in Key West, their legacy is still very much alive.
Surrender your booty, you scurvy wench!
I don't have any booty.
Oh, all right then.
Not a real pirate? This is the Pirate Soul Museum, started in 2005 by a pirate fanatic, Pat Croce. He started this with his own private collection of genuine pirate memorabilia that he's been amassing for almost 20 years. I'm going to check out some real booty.
Pat Croce's daughter Kelly showed me around.
Well, shiver me timbers and blow me down. Look what the cat dragged in.
Here we are. Calico Jack, looking really scary.
Yes.
Yeah,
How'd you guess it was him?
Well, I was in Jamaica, in Port Royal, and I saw where he was hanging. But, yeah, that's pretty graphic. And he was kind of the end of it all, right? The end of the golden age of piracy, or the beginning of the end.
Yes, exactly. Out of a big age of pirates that their reputations preceded them, and really, I mean, they're even perpetuating their own legends and peddling their own stories and myths made their jobs a lot easier. In the case of, say, Blackbeard, he made his own persona.
Is it all myth and legend?
Well, everyone talks about it as him being the scariest, the cruelest, the most ruthless pirate there was. And really, in the history books, you can't even find an account of him actually killing somebody.
Big spin.
Exactly. They were their own PR machines.
Get out of my face before I keelhaul you.
Wow, huh?
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's an original Jolly Roger flag. It's only one of 2 that exist in the world. The other one's in Finland, in a naval museum there. It's worth about $30,000. And it really just says pirates. I mean, it's a really cool skull and crossbones. It's really primitive. And
it's a very haunting one.
It is. It is. So here it is. That's what they do it all for.
That is incredible. This
That is
chest.
an authentic pirate treasure chest. This is the only treasure chest in the world that actually has it's directly attributed to real pirate. So there's actual documentation. It's been passed down through the years. It's everything you'd ever want in a treasure chest. It's amazing. But talking about treasure brings us to pieces of 8, which were the currency of the time. All these pieces of 8 here that were salvaged out of Port Royal, Jamaica, worth about $10,000 today in today's dollars.
I'm so happy to see this because I've been hearing pieces of 8, pieces of 8.
That's what they look like.
Pieces of 8.
Yep, and you can break them off into 8 pieces, so that's where they get the name.
Okay.
So what they're all in it for is the gold.
Right.
This is actual gold from Blackbeard's ship, Queen Anne's Revenge, which is amazing. And I know it's tiny, but it's real. I had to sift through a lot of sand to find that little bit of gold. It's kind of funny that it's that little, but it's also real.
It's real. It's the real deal.
Just down the road at the Mel Fisher Maritime Museum, there is a ton of treasure recovered from the wrecks across the region.
Look at this. This is real silver. It's incredibly heavy, and it's one of 1,000 of these silver ingots that, along with 100 treasure chests and 200,000 silver coins, was found in a wreck, a Spanish galleon called La Nuestra Senora de Atocha. It went down just off the coast here in Florida in 1622, carrying loot worth $400 million. This is mine to take home, apparently.
Of the hundreds of treasure-laden galleons that disappeared beneath the waves on their way to Spain, most lie off the Florida coast. Galleons were either attacked or sunk in hurricanes, like the San Pedro off the coast of Florida. I met up with maritime archaeologist Corey Malcolm, who agreed to take me out and show me the site of the galleon wreck, the San Pedro.
The San Pedro was a Spanish galleon that wrecked in 1733. So we're in Hurricane Alley here, and as they were sailing past the Florida Keys, it became apparent to them that a hurricane was coming. They tried to get back to Havana, but it didn't work. The storm hit them, caught them, and drove Out of 21 or 22 ships that were sailing, almost all of them were wrecked along a 30-mile stretch of the Florida Reef.
So the fleet was devastated. What did they lose?
They had lost with this fleet going down a year or two's New World wealth. I mean, they had massive amounts of silver coin from Mexico. They had porcelain from China that had crossed the Pacific, a lot of spices, gold, really a wide array of goods that were worth a king's fortune, literally.
What can I expect to see today? It looks kind of cloudy.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, with all the wind, it's made the water a little murky here, so it's not going to be crystal clear water today. But you're going to see cannon, you're going to see an anchor, and you're going to see a great big pile of ballast stones that look like rubble.
Most rock in this area is coral, so when you come across ballast stones, you know you found a wreck. These stones were collected from riverbeds in Spain and the New World and piled in the bottom of the ship as a counterweight to prevent it keeling over in the wind. By the 21st century, little remains of the hundreds of galleons strewn across the ocean floor, wrecked by hurricanes and battles alike. Treasure worth millions of dollars was lost to the waves, and to this day, only a fraction has been found and recovered. Not even the risk of chasing galleons into the path of a hurricane deterred the pirates, and their attacks in the Caribbean became so frequent and were so damaging to trade that a major campaign was launched against them. In a short period of time, the ringleaders either escaped into hiding or were killed. By the 1730s, the golden age of piracy was over.